Thank God it's Friday, and it's perhaps going to be one of the busiest we have in the year. We're counting down to Christmas, and sometimes when you look at how busy the roads are, how crowded the markets are, you begin to wonder if indeed the economy is as bad as many are saying. Well, congratulations, compliments of the season to you, and Happy New Year in advance from all of us here. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Welcome to This Morning, and I'm standing in for Yuri Folari. We're turning our attention this morning to the presentation of the 2019 budget proposal to a joint session of the National Assembly on Wednesday. Of course, against all odds, Mr. President showed up. Recall that prior to this time, the staff of the National Assembly were on strike, so many people had thought that, well, this presentation might not hold, or perhaps the president would send his vice or even a minister. But indeed, Mr. President showed up. But then, of course, you have heard the reportage of chairs and, jeers, bullyings and all of that. It's interesting how all of that play out. And on the show this morning, we're taking a critical look at the budget presentation as well as the 2019 budget document itself. I'm joined by financial analyst Mukhtar Mohammed. Good morning, and thank you for finding time to come.
So it's a pleasure being here. Good morning, Nigeria.
So what's the big deal with the rowdy session at the National Assembly? We have seen lawmakers protest against the presidents worldwide. It happened in South Africa when lawmakers, indeed shouted even at President Zuma at that time. In the British Parliament, the House of Commons, booing, jeering and cheering is a common phenomenon. Do you see any big deal in this?
I don't see any big deal in it. It's just because it's happening in Nigeria for the first time. I've had comment that, there showed lack of respect, lack of, like somebody said, it's not a village square meeting whereby the elder tells the other one, shut up and you sit down. We are in democracy. Everybody has his right to express himself.
That's right.
But the only thing I have against the lawmakers when they went physical, I don't think that was good for the image of Nigeria. But jeering or booing the president that can receive, that could be praised also could still also be booed. And I like the way the president handled it. And there have not been any comment, any release from the presidency as against what happened. It's common practice. I mean, you're talking about Theresa May just of recent, also the same thing like what you mentioned.
Jeremy Corbyn was accused of calling her a stupid woman.
I mean, then he even Jacob Zuma was told, Julius Nyerere said Zuma should not talk. Zuma is a thief. Publicly, he didn't allow him to talk. And in 2009, even when Barack Obama was also jailed,
the House of Reps member said he was lying.
He was lying. So it's nothing new. I just feel that they're taking the challenge I have is that they are taking attention from the real thing, which was the budget presentation. Nigerians are not talking about the budget presentation any longer. They are talking about the
drama at the floor of the House.
Nobody's looking at which is more important is the budget presentation, not the gene and the booing.
But interesting also is, the fallout or the build-up to this moment. There seemed to be a sharp political division at the level of the National Assembly, and many are of the opinion that it hasn't helped, a free flow of governance in the past 3.5 years.
I think initially, the ruling party got it wrong from the onset. They didn't put their house in order, and the opposition party took advantage of that. At the time, they didn't get to say who wants to be the Senate president, who wants to be the deputy Senate president. Remember, they were busy having their meetings whereby some of their members already gone in there, and that election was held. And after that, I expected them to have sat down with the Senate president or whatever, and then begin to say, okay, this has been done. That will happen even during the PDP administration when they didn't want Tambuwa to become the speaker. But when he became the speaker, they had to fall in line and try to mend. But in this case, we didn't see that. We saw a lot of high-level politics trying to disgrace him, trying to bring him out, trying to say corruption, take him to court, do everything, use the police. So I think that has not helped this administration. And unfortunately, they both need each other to drive this economy forward. And that's why I think for me, that's why we are seeing what we are seeing in the economy. We have seen a house of the legislators that have not been in good time with the presidency from day one, and they have not hidden it. They didn't play politics with it. You see, sometimes the challenge we have in this country, I keep saying that two things you don't play politics with. You don't play politics with your security, you don't play politics with your economy.
That's right.
Unfortunately, I don't think Nigerian politicians are mature enough to know that these two things are what touch the ordinary man, and they must be treated with speediness. not politically inclined nature.
Indeed, the journey to passing the budget in the recent years has been marked with a lot of contention and acrimony. We've heard stories of budget being padded, reports that budget was missing at the time. A member of the House of Reps was in suspension for close to a year, for the padding issue. Of course, the president had also at some point returned the budget document to the National Assembly and all of that. But let's begin to look at the implication of this document precisely, on our economy. Let's begin with the need for a January to December fiscal cycle. Mr. President touched on this earlier in the year when he promised, indeed, that he was determined to work with the National Assembly to implement this process. Of course, we understand that the budget as it is represents less than 10% of the aggregate yearly expenditures in the economy. But there is indeed the private sector, which mostly operates between January and December. Yeah. What's really are the implications of this on the economy? The
implications are always negative. I mean, you see, it's like you have a bigger brother, he's running a different race, and you're supposed to follow him, and you're running a different rate. Then there will not be synergy. Like you rightly pointed out, the private sector, the budget run from January to December. And then some private sector are supposed to build from what comes from the public sector. In any economy in the world, I mean, government are the highest spender, and the private sector key into those relevant areas that government will be putting their eyes on, so that's where they generate the employment, that's where they generate their bottom line profit. But unfortunately, we've never had it right when it comes to budgeting, especially since the civilian administration came into being. During the military administration, I think that was one thing they did get right. At the 1st of January, the president released the budget. Remember, nobody's going to challenge him. But this time we're in democracy, and it calls for scrutiny. I think that's the challenge. And the president did not help matter, because the last time the president presented the budget, where he was saying that this coming budget, the 2019 budget, he will make sure that he presents it earlier, maybe towards the last quarter of the year. But he just presented it in December, and so to make matters
it even came later than last year. He presented it in November, on November 7th, 2017.
So he was even saying that he's going to work towards presenting it in October or September, and here we are presenting it in December. And the House of Rep and the Senate have gone on recess, and they won't be coming back until sometime January 16. And we know at that time politics have taken the center stage. So as it stands now, I don't think we see the light. Maybe the coming legislators, maybe the 9th National Assembly will come and handle this budget.
It's interesting how it has played out, especially the 2018 budget. The president sent it on November 7th. It didn't return to him about 6 months after, the dilly-dallying with the National Assembly and all of that. Before we get into the 2019 document proper, let's look at how the 2018 budget has performed thus far. In his review of the budget, President Buhari said that it had achieved 67% in terms of expenditure, with revenue recording 53% at the end of the third quarter. How really, how fantastic are these figures?
I'm happy the president said in terms of expenditure, which is 67%, and I mean 60% of those funds were released, and were released for what? We need to look at what they were released for. He didn't give us a break. We know that 100% recurrent expenditure is always released on time. This 67%, by the time you go into the liquidity of it, you know that means capital project release, just 67%. And it's not good for us, because a lot of projects are lying down there that were supposed to be concluded. Money were not released on time. Some of those projects started late. You could just take the challenges we are having, the Lagos-Ibadan axis, because they say funding was not released on time. The legislature did not approve it on time. So we'll continue to have those challenges. In terms of implementation of this budget, I think the only thing we see is the capital project that they say they are doing. When they tell us about the rail line from Lagos to Ibadan, they tell us about the road construction, the second Niger bridge, and other projects they are doing. I think that's but what trickled down to the ordinary Nigerian in terms of job creation, we are not seeing that. In terms of food on their table, we didn't see that manifest itself.
But isn't that also supposed to, one way or the other, have a ripple effect on unemployment? The vice president is of the opinion that this administration seems to have spent so much money on infrastructure, much more than any government had in time past, and there are trillions of naira. How come we're not feeling the impact?
Let me give you a scenario. Let me give you a scenario. You have a huge, let's not even go far. We have a very huge infrastructure in the National Stadium. Here in Surulere. and even the National Stadium in Abuja. When those infrastructure are not managed well by people, people were not trained to manage it, those infrastructure are decaying. So the challenge we have, the challenge that this government have, we are putting a lot into infrastructural development, but forgetting to develop our people, which is the strength of any nation, your people, not the infrastructure.
It's all right. Let's look at the revenue in 2018. Federal government's actual aggregate revenue was 2.84 trillion naira. Are we making profit?
We can't say we are making profit, because if you look at that revenue compared to our debt ratio, we realize that we are at a negative. But we have to commend them, especially in terms of revenue in the non-oil sector. We have to give it to the Federal Inland Revenue. They have done marvelously well. They've been able to improve their bottom line in terms of getting more Nigerians to pay tax. That is commendable. That is one thing this administration has done that you cannot take it away from them. They've tried to make sure that they build up Nigerians begin to pay tax, and then this tax revenue are being used. But unfortunately, it's very unfortunate because of the type of federalism that we practice. This revenue comes in at the 3-tier of government. The Commissioner of Finance is so happy to go to Abuja. Nobody is thinking inwardly on how to generate and get what to get to Abuja to supplement what they have to do. So all of them we are just practicing a feed-the-bottle federalism, whereby everybody just wants to Abuja to collect this money. And sometimes that is why you could not see those effects. You see, we Nigerians, we are so used to the federal government. Nobody's asking the state governors what they are doing in their budget. Nobody's asking the local government. All we are concerned about is the federal government. That is the way, because the military mentalism is still in us. But ordinarily, I shouldn't be so bothered about what is happening with
at
the
federal
government
level.
I should be
I should
bothered
ask
about
my government,
with the Lagos State that I'm staying, the road on in front of me that is the government road. What are they doing? But we have made it feel like the center is everything. And that is why people are clamoring for separation of power.
Dr. Let's peep into the budget of continuity, 8.83 trillion naira budget proposal. The first thing that comes to mind here is that this figure is way less than the figure passed last year. Last year was 9.1 trillion naira being implemented, of course, for the current fiscal year. As a financial analyst, how do you interpret that?
Well,
given the rate of inflation,
I think the government is beginning to look at it that we can't spend what we don't have. Even if you looked at the 2018, most of them budget funding is going to be funded by borrowing. So I think what the government is doing this time, they are trying to do less of borrowing, because they know that the level of borrowing they've done for the past 3 years has been huge. So they are trying to do less of borrowing. So that's why I think that figure is coming down.
But by the time the National Assembly adds it, because in the past 2 years, the National Assembly has always added to the budget. The previous one was above 500 billion naira. You don't think this figure will add up?
Look, it will be a shame. It will be an embarrassment if the National Assembly is going to add to this budget based on one single fact. This budget, I'm sure what I expect the National Assembly to do is to even see ways that they can reduce this budget in terms of some things, look at the key things that will benefit the ordinary Nigerian. Because why am I saying that? Already, the budget is already deficiency in terms of our revenue already, because the price of oil, as to when the president was presenting his budget, was $56 per barrel, and they told our revenue to be $60 per barrel. So we are already down in terms of revenue that is going to come into the federal government. So that if they go ahead and begin to, then we begin to ask, where do you want to get this money? Because as it stands now, the government even need to look inward. If what we expect the House to do is to even begin to bring down the price of crude oil to as low as $50 per barrel or $52 per barrel, right, so that we can even have little to be put into the SS crude account or the sovereign wealth bond. Because as it stands now, the SS crude account were made to understand that the government has even withdrawn it about $1 billion. So what we have is about $600 million, which is not enough to take care. The SS crude account is to take care of immediate shock that will come. And our currency is still neither here nor there. So they need to do a lot of buffering.
So the 2019 budget estimate is 300 billion naira, lower than the previous document, 9.1 billion naira. But the major highlight of this budget is the provision of 305 billion naira for under recovery of the NNPC. It appears that no government wants to try to totally take out subsidy.
Well, it's a very, very, very tough thing for a government to do. We we need to look at that. We shouldn't just think about. It's very tough because why? Everything around us as a people is centered around petroleum products. We've not gotten because the power is not still there completely. So people have to go and buy fuel to power their generator. Movement, we don't have the rail movement. We still have movement from our cars from point A to point B. The only challenge I have is if last year alone, from the figure we're getting for NNPC, they spent almost a trillion in payment or subsidy. Is it that the cars in this year are going to be less on the road? Because we're made to believe that the cars last year are more. So are we going to see reduction of these cars this year and 300 and something billion? And again, maybe they're looking at the oil price coming a little bit down so they could, but without that, I don't understand, because for me, I've always been an advocate that subsidy should be removed.
How sustainable are these figures? Because you begin to compare how much money we're spending on education, for instance, with how much money we're spending to buy fuel, and then you're wondering if indeed the what do they call it now, the bringing about diversification of the economy is really a reality. Yes. Do you think this figure, spending this much, is sustainable? It's
not sustainable, which the government know, but like I said, you won't blame. It's not this government that started the whole challenge, because the refineries are not working. We depend on importation of oil. The only challenge I have that I felt that as a new government of change, would have been able to address it, because the cost of a refined product coming to Nigeria is always cheap until it hits our water, because of so much tax, so much payment. You have to pay custom, you have to pay Nigerian product. What I think the government should have done in those states was to try to see how they can reduce some of this payment that is was paid, so that then we'll begin to have less subsidy. But even those agencies also are agencies of government. They want to generate revenue too. Right. So we're having a challenge. I think the main challenge we have, even this overflow into our reserve, because if you look at the number of people that bid for foreign exchange, you realize that the petroleum market has had the highest. So that shows that if we are able to address that situation, whereby we are no more importing refined petroleum product, that alone is going to put the pressure, we're going to put more pressure on the dollar than on the naira. So we could see a reversal in terms of the exchange rate coming down without us doing anything, come down to whatever level that will be determined by market forces. Unfortunately, we are not doing that, because some of these refineries are not working. The government does not have the political will yet to sell off this refinery. The government does not have the political will yet to say, look, we are going to get a hand off NNPC to become private driven. I can assure you, this same NNPC, this same government corporation that are busy reporting losses, by the time they get to the hand of the private sector, you begin to see them come up with figures that will be mind-blowing.
Let's see indeed how that plays out in the coming years. The Vice President made mention of this during the Vice Presidential debate, that a total removal of subsidy would mean adding about 40 naira to a litre of petrol. And the big question is whether Nigerians are ready, to pay that much for fuel and all of that. But let's move on very quickly because of our time. A lot of unions are on strike right now, especially in the education sector. ASU is on strike. ASUP just joined. Of course, the NLC is also threatening to go on strike by the 31st of this year. You begin to wonder if all of these demands are captured in the 2019 budget.
The president openly told the House when he was presenting the budget that he will send supplementary for the minimum wage bill for the workers.
But that's not the only bill in contention. I mean, that's not the only fund in contention. There are quite a number. The ASU is there. The health practitioners are also kicking.
Well, we've seen that for the first time in the past 3 years of this administration, we've seen that only security happened to have more than education this time. So we hope that some of these demands by ASU have been captured in that, and if it is not captured, they are still in meeting with the federal government, and so I'm sure the government can still send supplementary bill. Unfortunately, education should have been the one with the highest allocation. But unfortunately, again, like I said, we are battling with security challenges. So it's when the environment is secure that you can even think of education.
And you begin to also wonder if we're really seeing a direct impact of how much money we're spending on security. Security itself.
No, let's look at it like this. Some of the security equipment that we are asking for are not things that you have in the supermarket and you just go there and buy them.
Let me hold you for a bit to take this call. Reverend Dominic is calling in from Alimosho. Good morning, Reverend. Hello, Reverend, are you there? Okay.
Hello.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, Reverend Dominic.
Good
Please.
morning, Femi. Good morning.
Glad to have you around. Compliments of the season. Go ahead with your contribution.
Thank you. Once again.
Good morning.
Femi, honestly, I need to think that maybe what I call not good governance in Nigeria has to take all of us. I'm not interested to see the figures of this budget because I believe so. If all that we're hearing from the international community about the oil price is true, this budget is bound to fail. It's projected on $50 per barrel. By today, the oil price in the international market is better than $57. How are you going to fund it? Here, we know what it was. Now, we have not seen the effect of the budget of last year. And last year, the budget was presented earlier, around October, and with around June. To this year, we presented by December with all the dramas. When are we going to pass 2019 budget? With the kind of the National Assembly we have and their body language. What we are doing here is a joke. Until we sit down at this session to sit down and ask ourselves, what kind of government do we have? Are we serious to put bread on people's table? Let me give you an example. We are hearing that the rice importation is somewhat as before. But I'm a pastor. There was Thanksgiving in my church 2 weeks Sunday. I don't see any local one bag of rice that people brought to that Thanksgiving service. What is this local rice? And people talk about every day. There's a rice between Lagos and Kebbi State. I'm not going.
I think you made your point very clearly, Reverend Dominic. Thank you very much for your contribution on the program. He was referring to the budget, the assumptions upon which this proposal is based. One of it is the oil price benchmark of $60.
Not even if you look at it, there's a lot of assumptions there that are not.
300
GDP coming to 3.1 from even when the World Bank and others have even told us that we are going to have a slower growth, even in the world economy. Nigeria was expected to have 1.9 this coming year, which would have been an improvement from where we are coming. But the government is having an ambitious game of 3.1% in growth GDP. That is not achievable. You look at the single-digit inflation rate of 9.8, and we're doing 12. And remember that it took us 3 years to get to 12 from 19. So when you look at some of these assumptions, you wonder what's on the mind. Maybe there are some things that the government know that we don't know.
Let's look at the oil price benchmark of $60 per barrel. As we speak right now, OPEC is already talking about the need to cut down oil production to, of course, regulate the price in the new year. Shouldn't the National Assembly be talking about beating this price?
That's why I said this way I want to see how patriotic the National Assemblies are. Are we going to, because even with what has transpired even 2 weeks ago, the president said what he sent to the National Assembly in terms of reform, Paris for reform to state, the National Assembly has even high the price more than what he sent to
Let me hold it for a minute to take this call from Dr. Mo. Good morning, Yakub.
Hello, good morning.
Please go ahead with your contribution.
Good morning, Mr. Mukhtar.
It's a pleasure, sir. Morning, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to ask Mr. Mukhtar some questions. One is that, let me just go straight to the point. One is that you said something earlier that this present government, they don't have political will to at least maybe to sort of a refinery, the private sector, if I'm getting you right. Are you of opinion that these 4 refineries that we have must be private people driving business? That is number one. Number two, for me, I may be wrong, I may be right. The subsidy of the thing that we are paying for, I think we are paying for something that we have in this country, and then for the fact that we took it away out of the country and then we buy the finished product, that is what we are paying for. Now that the Dangote refinery may be, as we hear, maybe it's going to come up maybe next year ending or something. I believe when that refinery come up, it's like this price of a tin of the petroleum PMS will come down drastically. The question is that, are you of opinion, these 4 refineries that we have, the government needs to throw this up or to give it to private sector to run it? Because some people are of opinion that if they sold those refineries, they sold Nigerian resources, Nigerian waste off.
I think you made your point very clear. You want to quickly answer to that?
Yes, I've said it. No government runs any business very well. It has been proven. The statistics are there all over the world. Even British Petroleum is being run by private, where the government have their own shareholding.
Is there not also the fear of totally now giving all of government infrastructure into the hands of the private sector?
That's what I'm saying, that we have a public-private participation. Government is not going to hands up completely, but government is going to be the largest shareholders, while the other private investors...
How has it worked with PHCN thus far?
With the PHCM...
Do people trust the process? Do we
the
have a track record of excellence?
You see, the problem is that we have a president that people trust. So that he's the one that can drive this process. And people will believe that, oh, we trust him, that he's not going to be paying favorizing to some of those politicals, he's going to go through them. That's what I think he should capitalize on. But saying that those refineries, the kind of money that's being sink into these refineries, and yet those refineries are not working, it's a conduit pipe for corruption. As far as I'm concerned, those refineries, if those refineries are given to private hands, we give those refineries to the private hand, and government becomes the shareholder. And then in turn, government sells some of those shares to Nigerians. And let's see how that refinery will not be run well. Whereby, look, you don't even need to go far. Look at the LNG. The type of dividend that government gets from the LNG, which is not run by government. You just need to go there. So if that shows that, and from this dividend, government have been able to use it to buffer some of their expenditure. So you can see that the kind of revenue, without them sinking so much into it, will not be able to use. They will be able to use it to begin to drive other key infrastructure.
Perhaps we can also take a cue from the telecommunications sector and all of that. Okurafo is calling in from Abia State. Good morning,
Good morning, Sukan.
Please go ahead with your contribution.
Good morning, my brother, Nefumi. Now, I want to find out from Mr. Mukan. My brother, look, let us look at this issue. Education is above just 100 something billion. Now, if education is above 400 something billion, we have seen that polytechnics are on strike, universities are on strike, education is the same thing. How do you think that budget at presently does it cover what is happening now presently? And looking at the situation, how did the National Assembly, how they behave? Are we sure that this budget it will favor the educational sector for the lecturers to go back? Because if you go down and see most of our students, all of them at home doing nothing, and the crime rate has already increased already. Now you're talking about oil. Nigerians are supposed to be diversified. All this issue of oil does not solve this, because even though the refinery we have, to put it in place, it's not possible for 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. It takes up to 6 or 7 months before you put it. It's impossible. Because if the oil is to be around like $440, it could have been put in. But the issue of this above this level we are facing. And presently, as you know, the cost of living is increasing higher. There is no way you can go to the market and you get the kilo of meat 800. So around 1,000 something.
It's all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Okurafo, for your contribution. We're wrapping up now, but it appears that from what we've seen in this document, there seemed to be a departure from this administration's pledge to increase the capital vote against Recurrent. We were celebrating 30% the other time, but the figures appears to have dropped this year.
Like I said, the figures have dropped maybe because of their revenue. You see, that's the challenge I have. The recurrent expenditure that we're talking about are salaries. And these salaries is less than 10% of Nigerians. And out of these 10% of Nigerians that are enjoying these salaries, about 90% of those 10% are political appointees.
Perhaps the key is improving the revenue.
Improving the revenue, like the last caller said, diversifying. But the challenge we have with diversifying is you cannot diversify without using the revenue, because our key constant revenue now that we can think about is from the crude oil. So we still need, we still have to stay with the oil sector. We need to use it like other countries have used it to begin to develop other streams of income.
That's right.
And that we have not done, but I believe that with time we'll begin to do that with this government coming up. Especially if you look at the tax, I can tell you that that is one big area whereby if the government goes continue with that drive, it could generate more than even what we generate from the crude.
Financial analyst Mukhtar Mohammed, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure, EFM.
We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll be joined by a candidate who is contesting for a spot at the Lagos State House of Assembly. That will be after this break. Stay with us. Glad to have you join us again. So 2019 election is just around the corner, and it's amazing that when we talk about people going to the poll, much attention is turned to executive positions. No one is really looking at the legislature. Today we have the African Democratic Congress candidate seeking a position in the Lagos State House of Assembly, Ikeja Constituency 1, Dr. John Kume. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
So who is John Kume?
Well, John Kume, I'm a Nigerian in the first place. I'm popularly called Omodua because I was born here in the West and then grew up in the North, then bred by the Easterners, originally from Delta State or the then old Midwestern region. So I'm a pure Nigerian. I've been in Lagos for many, many years, good about 4 decades now. Again, I'm a married man. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a preacher. I'm a pastor. And also perhaps a technocrat.
So there are people who would say that priesthood and politics are like water and oil that shouldn't mix. And the fact that if you're a preacher and a priest, taking up a public office will be like stooping, from a highly exalted divine assignment. Tell me, really, how are you taking advantage of that Revelation 5:10 that calls us kings and priests?
Sure, you're right. I think you become a very stronger pastor too.
Oh, I must have read a couple of scriptures myself.
Beautiful. You see, we are made to understand this part of the world, just as much as everywhere in the world, that politics is a dirty game, and that it's not good for clean people, in quote, righteous people. But yes, I want the world to know that if a game is dirty, or if a situation seems to be unclean or dirty, who cleans it? Is it the dirty people or the clean people? If it is a corrupt structure or system, who remove the corruption out of it? Is it the morally upright people? Is it the righteous people, or a continuum of the same people or the same system? That's the question I also put back to the people. And they say politics is the game of sinners. I would like the people to know that I preach Jesus, and I also realize in the Bible that Jesus ate with the sinners with the intention to influence the sinners.
So you have been eating with the sinner politicians, that's what you're saying?
No, because of the question you asked earlier, that how does oil and water mix?
Okay.
The politics is seen as a very dirty game. I think it's this game of the sinners. I'm trying to infer that Jesus Christ also mixed with these people.
You know, a name that comes to mind right now is Reverend Chris Okoti, who had once said that God told him to contest. Did God tell you to contest?
God did not tell me directly to contest, but over the past 11 years, God has shown me revelations upon revelations that infers or implies that I need to go and help the poor people.
So you're running for a spot at the Lagos State House of Assembly out of about 40 seats.
Absolutely.
Majority has always been with the ruling All Progressives Congress.
Sure.
What chances do you think your party, the African Democratic Congress, has in a place like Ikeja constituency, which is dominantly an APC area?
Sure. Like you rightly said, in Parliament we have the majority leader and we have the minority leader. I don't think if the ruling party win all the seats, who becomes the minority leader?
But what impact really have you seen minority leadership, bring to the parliament, both at the National Assembly and at the state level?
I think the political structure that brings about a position of the minority leader has its tensions. If people who have been there over the years are unable, if you think so, to do something about it, I think there's a structure politically that gives the minority leader a pose or a place to influence.
The popular saying has always been that majority have their way, minority only have a say in the parliament, in the legislative arm of government. So I'm wondering precisely what significant impact you can have. For instance, you have a bill, that you're interested in, and you don't have the numbers.
I may not have the numbers, but I can influence my colleagues in the parliament. When you have a good policy, when you have a good case, when you have a good intention, your colleagues buy over it. They buy into it also. So let me tell you something. legislation is about, number one, not only making laws and policies, but about influencing decisions that are obnoxious, decisions that are not in the interest of the common man. So if, as a minority leader, I'm shut upon, and my colleagues in the parliament know that the legislative or the legislature or the policy of procedures or laws that I'm bringing is a good one for the people to even help the government of the day. They will support.
So your election, for instance, now is not a statewide election. It's specific to
A constituency.
Your constituency.
Sure.
What issues, really would you say are contentious and would matter in this election for your people?
Sure. That brings me to my manifesto. Number one, I realize my constituency, for instance, is diverse. We have the elite, we have the middle class or the average, and we have the poor people and the absolutely poor people. I have, for the past 28 years, lived in this constituency. It seems to be that I know from street to street of this constituency. And I know the kind of people living in there. One, there are people of diverse ethnic, religious beliefs. And I think that I am going there having understood the people to see how I can use that position, one, to benefit the elite, two, to benefit the average and the less privileged people. Three, the constitution that I'm contesting for, that is where the seat of government is. I want to help the government. I want to tell the government, I want to show the government how to affect the people, the diverse people in this constituency.
How do you think government can do that?
Sure. And that is why we have three arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And as a legislator, it is my duty to make the executive to know what is the need of the people in that constituency and how I can talk to the executive and influence them to touch the life of the diverse people in that constituency.
You think the lawmakers in that area haven't been doing that?
Sure. Now you need to go out and ask the people. For instance, I go through nook and cranny and ask the people, since the past years, what have the people representing you able to offer to you? My responses, which I wouldn't want to make public, is amazing. And I presented myself to them. They asked me a lot of questions. What am I going to do there different? And I'm able to tell them what I'm going to do different. My image, my name, my image, and my vision determines whether the people will entrust their vote on me or not.
But have you been able to identify these issues, cutting across from the elite, the middle class and the poorest of the poor that you made mention earlier? What precisely would you say are the challenges, peculiar to your constituency?
Number one, poverty, unemployment, destitution, hunger, insecurity is also in the place. For instance, for the past 2 weeks, I've been moving in that constituency between the hours of 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. I see a lot of insecurity, a lot of insecurity.
You've been moving there between 1 and 5 a.m.?
Sure,
okay.
with my team.
All right.
Because when I say this insecurity, what are the evidence? Am I just coming here to give an impression? No, I have facts to prove that. Number one, there's insecurity. Number two, there's unemployment. Number three, we talk about even education. There's a part of the constituency that the elite, highly educated people who educate their children, and there are other areas in the constituency while the children are wallowing on the street while their mates are in the school. So as I go, I have to be a good representation of the people.
And you're banking on the fact that you will be able to convince the executive, turn the executive's attention to these challenges
I
in your
think
constituency.
the executive is there to serve the people. In the first place, what is politics? Politics is about managing people and the resources available to the people. Don't forget, government is a continuum. So if I go there, I'm going to tell the executive that you are there for the people. And this is how I think you can help the people in my constituency. And I believe whoever is going to emerge the governor of the state would like to see that his government touch the people. The governor may not know everything. It's my duty there to tell the governor, this is what I think my constituency needs. And I have to convince him why he should put that in place so that should he want to come back the next time, it will be easier for him.
So
it doesn't matter whether I'm in opposition or not. I'm not going there to attack the whoever governor is going to be there, I'm there to join him to make life better for the people.
So are you concerned about your party's structure? Because they say in an election year, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are, it's about whether you have the money bags, you know, the structure. Of course, it's also part of it, because with structure comes the financial implication. You know, you need representative of all of the polling units, you know. But how ready would you say the ADC is in Lagos?
Well, if we go by the structure of the, you know, party contesting, especially the two major parties, the APC and the PDP, I think these two parties over the years have created a very strong structure on the system. And then other parties like ADC, where I'm coming, the platform which I'm contesting, we are a little bit disadvantaged. But you see, it's all about your ambition, your structure. You want to put between this time limit. It's all about ideas. It's all about system. It's about how you apply what you have within the limit of time between now and February or March to be able to get to the people. One thing you have to know is that the people out there, many of them are educated. When you present your manifesto to them and you're able to convince them how you're going to be able to get this manifesto fulfilled and actualized within a short period of time, many of them change their structure or their party to support you.
What's your campaign budget like for this election?
Well, that I cannot be able to tell you, because, like you said, the other parties, the major parties, APC and the PDP, I'm sorry to say, they have been on ground for many years, and they are so-called money bags. ADC is predominantly a new party, although I've been existing since 2006, but as far as governance and involvement is concerned, they are pretty new. I think I'm not a money bag, and I don't have such a budget, but I think if you have a good structure on Ghana, a good manifesto, you see people support you within.
But I hope you know that there is a framework within the law of how much you can spend, at this level of election. And you also have a responsibility to report back, to the umpire. Exactly how much you've spent. So even when you're elected as a lawmaker, you are aware that you will not be limited to the desires or the needs of your constituency. It will be about making and implementing laws for the generality of the Lagos people. Now, let's begin to look at some of the challenges, facing Lagosians. One of it has been identified to be traffic congestion. Given the billions of naira that have been lost, yearly to this disaster, what role do you think the House of Assembly can play in this light?
Sure. Number one, I'm not going to be able to tell you all that I have in mind as far that transport problems and committing party to support you.
What's your campaign budget like for this election?
Well, that I cannot be able to tell you, because, like you said, the other parties, the major parties, APC and the PDP, I'm sorry to say, they have been on ground for many years, and they are so-called money bags. ADC is predominantly a new party, although I've been existing since 2006, but as far as governance and involvement is concerned, they are pretty new. I think I'm not a money bag, and I don't have such a budget, but I think if you have a good structure on Ghana, a good manifesto, you see people support you within.
But I hope you know that there is a framework within the law of how much you can spend, at this level of election. And you also have a responsibility to report back, to the umpire. Exactly how much you've spent. So even when you're elected as a lawmaker, you are aware that you will not be limited to the desires or the needs of your constituency. It will be about making and implementing laws for the generality of the Lagos people. Now, let's begin to look at some of the challenges, facing Lagosians. One of it has been identified to be traffic congestion. Given the billions of naira that have been lost, yearly to this disaster, what role do you think the House of Assembly can play in this light?
Sure. Number one, I'm not going to be able to tell you all that I have in mind as far that transport problems and committing is all about, because I want to tell you that time is money. So when people spend so much time in committing from one place to another, they can't meet up their businesses. Therefore, the whole economic structure is broken down. For instance, I travel, I'm privileged by God to have traveled to so many countries of the world. As a matter of fact, only one continent I've not been to. And when I get there, I've gone around the continents of the world. Let me give an example, Africa here, where we are. Yeah. You see, if you go to Ghana, for instance, you see that the transport situation is not as secular and hectic as in Lagos. Not just because of the population of Nigeria or Lagos vis-a-vis Accra, for instance. But you see, there's something that is right there in Accra and in most cities in Africa here that we lack in Lagos, feeder roads. And I think the last government from the great mentor, my great mentor, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they were able to create this feeder road. But I don't think they have done enough. There's need to create more feeder roads to be able to bring a solution to this traffic congestion of a thing. And again, we look at our transportation system. Well, I think that because of the crime that the Okada riders and all this Kekemarua and the more traffic problem they are causing because of institutional problem, social problem with the people, because it's not just about creating the feeder road. We need to also talk about the attitude of Nigerians. Our impatience and all of those things that make, because even if we create feeder roads, until we affect the life of the people, the mentality, the psychic of Nigerians, even if you create all the feeder roads, you see, there will still be traffic congestion, because it's all about attitudinal problem.
So Lagos prides itself as having a huge and robust internally generated revenue, even though many of the opinion that it can do more. But at the local government level, the challenge of multiple taxation is really, huge. You hear small-scale entrepreneurs complain of how much money they have to pay. They tax you for TV and radio, even if you don't have any in your shop. I don't know if that's peculiar to your constituency, but sure. What solutions do you have for them?
In the first place, although my constituency doesn't have that problem like some other constituency in Lagos. But you see, number one, most of this so-called taxation, multiple taxation or tax, are not going to the government coffers. Because if most of these tax are going to the government coffer and the government is using it to better the loss of the people right from the local government, the people wouldn't even cry much. Because if I am paying for a particular purpose and I'm seeing the result, I wouldn't cry. Let's look at America, for instance. A country, most Western countries, they pay tax. But people there don't complain of this multiple taxation because they see what the tax is doing. And this tax go directly to the government coffers, and to a large extent, it's not being paid for, it's not being stolen, as we see in our country. So I think that if they tax the people, and the people are seeing what the tax is meant for, the people wouldn't complain. And when I go there, you will see it happening in my constituency. Number two, I would like to also monitor the taxation from the local government. I will make the local government chairman or whoever is, this tax is for what? And why must you tax these people who are struggling to survive? I wouldn't know if I have enough time. Let me tell you something as a pastor. I've been a pastor for 39 years. By next year, I'll be 40 years as a pastor. Listen to me, as I talk to you now, right there in my office, I know I have not less than 15 or 13 people waiting for me. 95% of these people are there for money. They are there for help. They are there for food. I may meet some of them now. If you go with me, you'll see a woman with about 5 kids and who will tell you, these kids have not eaten for 3 days. You can see how these children look like as if they were HIV children. They are not sick, but they are suffering malnutrition. Now, you are collecting tax, and the people are hungry. I would like to know, what are you using tax for? I need to monitor what they are using the tax for. And if the taxes they are collecting are obnoxious, I bring out a law to stop such tax.
So a couple of months ago...
and moreover, sir, if you wouldn't mind.
Please do.
In most of this country, you need to tax the elite more and tax the poor people less.
And you think it's a model that can be implemented here in Lagos?
If it's being implemented somewhere else and it's working, why not Nigeria? Why not Lagos?
A couple of months ago, the issue of refuse disposal, became a gigantic challenge for Lagosians. For the first time in a long time, we started seeing, refuse on the streets and all of that. What's your opinion about the Lagos House of Assembly verdict on the Visionscape and, asking the PSP to return?
Of course, it worked. a government, the executive now, they can come out with a policies or a procedure to achieve a particular goal. Now, in this case, as a refuse disposal. But when it couldn't work, and the refugees were coming back again, the legislative arm of government saw that that decision or that policy of the executive was not working. So they have to tell them to revert to the structure that had been set before that was working during the past administration. They reverted to the, now I think things are coming back to normal again.
According to them, the new agency was alien to law, and many people were wondering why did they take the House so long, you know, to do its job as a check on the executive. Would you say that the House of Assembly is a rubber stamp still to the executive in this part of the world?
No, not at all. You see, it's not wrong for whoever is in government to implement a particular policy or structure or game or system. Life is all about trying, and if it didn't work, you leave that, you try another one. And I discover all great achievers in the world must have tried several times before they get it right. And that somebody in government, perhaps the governor or the executive, try a particular structure or system and it didn't work, they must not be hanged. It is a duty of check and balance to say, this one does not work. And you may say, why did it take so long? Oh, there must be a trial. Trial does not come overnight. And when the governor or the executive tried that structure, they thought it's going to work. And the legislature, I think they were watching to see whether they can make it work. You see, in my manifesto, I said, if you can get it right, you do it right. Once you can get it right, you can do it right. Why things are the way they are in our country, in our system yet, because we've not got things right. I am going there to tell the legislators and the executive as well as the judiciary, let's get things right in this country, not just in Lagos.
So how confident are you in the electoral system as it is? Just recently, a lot of opposition parties started crying foul about the refusal of Mr. President to sign the Electoral Act Amendment Bill into law. Are you confident in the substantive law as it is to give you a free and fair, opportunity in the coming poll?
Things are not changing. If the Mr. President didn't sign that law, now, you see, it's not just about we in Lagos or Nigeria, it's about the global village. The world is watching. If you say you want to give Nigerians a credible election, the world is also watching. For instance, I belong to an international civil society organization who are coming to Nigeria when my own election will be taking place to monitor.
Just a minute, let me take this call from Sulaiman. Sulaiman is calling in from Bauchi. Hello, good morning. Hello, Sulaiman, are you there? Sulaiman, if you're there, go ahead with your contribution.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm calling from Bauchi. My name is Sulaiman.
All right, go ahead.
My question is that for what you just said now, he has a group. But how can he be able to educate people so that they can be able to? Because you have to pass awareness. From what he said, I can see he has something in mind. But how can he make it so that it can be there? What are these? How have he been teaching people? How he is going to go about it for him to be able to achieve his aim? Thank you.
All right, Sulaiman is interested in your strategy to reaching out to people and convincing them to vote for you.
Okay, before I talk about the strategy, Mr. Sulaiman, we're talking about, how
mentioned
credible...
international agency coming to monitor this particular election.
I belong to an international
Did you invite
agency.
them?
I didn't invite them. They told
because
me.
you mentioned that they were going to be monitoring your election.
Yes, they are coming because I'm one of them.
Okay.
They are coming because they have heard so much thing about my country, and when I go for this symposium, they ask me a lot of things about Nigeria. I tell them that most of these things you hear, they are not actually true. While some maybe most of them are not true. So this time around, they said, okay, since you were going to contest, we are going to come there at their expense to monitor my election. And as I talk with them, as they come, it's diverse. The white people will be in a hotel with their gadgets watching, while the black people will be among us as if they were Nigerian to monitor. They want to see if those things that is being said about Nigerian elections are credible, are true or not. Now, this is what is going to happen if the bill, the Electoral Act, as amended, is not signed by Mr. President. It's going to give international community the impression that Nigeria in 2019 are not ready for credible election.
Isn't Mr. President's position also credible? The fact that you can't change the goalpost right in the middle of a match is less than 6 months to an election. In fact, as we speak right now, the election is in February. We're talking about 3 months from now. How do you begin to implement a new law, with such a very limited time before a general election?
I don't think it's a new law. The law has been there, but because some people who are in power know that that law may go against them, may mitigate. So what they did, now that they lost that position, they now said, okay, let's implement the law. The laws have always been there in our constitution for a long time. So I don't think you can change a law within 1 week if the law will bring credibility to what we are doing as a country, as people.
They're talking about full biometric verification, introduction of technology, such that there wouldn't even be an alternative for incidence form. You think we have enough, we are ready, to go all electronic 3 months to an election?
Thank you how you put it now. Are you sure we are ready?
Oh, yeah.
We can if we are ready.
Okay.
But the question is, are we really ready to give Nigeria credible elections? And let me tell you, if we don't get it right in this particular election, to a large extent, in the many years to come, we may not be able to get it right.
Dr. John Kome, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us, and I wish you all the best in your endeavors. And that's our show today. We're counting down to the big one in 2019. And of course, you can't afford to sit on the fence. Everyone has to be involved as we begin to create a new future for our dear country, Nigeria. Compliments of the season to you. We'll be back next week, God willing, with another exciting one. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Thanks for joining us.